Bitcoin just took a nosedive, and guess what else went bust? A whole bank. That's right, the first US bank failure of 2024. And it's got everyone asking, is this the end of traditional finance? Buckle up, because we're going to dissect Republic First Bank collapse and what this means for your crypto holdings. Let's get into it. Republic First Bank closed by US regulators, and the crypto community has reacted. The Republic First Bank's 32 branches across the United States will reopen under Fulton Bank starting next week, according to FDIC. Now, the United States regulators have closed the Philadelphia-based Republic First Bank, making and marking the nation's first banking failure of 2024. Now, this shouldn't be a shock to any OGs of the channel, because back in January, I was talking about just this.
This is $365 billion of outflows from the US banks. Now, this is pretty significant, and there is basically a second coming to the US banking crisis in 20.
And if that wasn't enough of a warning for you guys, then it's important to note that I followed this up back in February of 2024 as well.
And we're about to see the next wave of banks potentially collapsing. This is a pretty big problem, specifically in the US, but I do think other parts of the world are also going to be affected by this exact issue. Okay, so back in January.
So is it a shock that Bitcoin and the altcoins have reacted negatively to this news? It is not a shock, at least not to me. It does appear that there's a lot of things going on at a regional level over in the US, as indicated back in January and back in February of this year. Now, it may take some time to see some of these other issues kind of emerging, but nonetheless, the issue still remains true. There was inflation. We saw this from the money printing that was happening back in 2020, 2021, and as a result, lots of liquidity-based issues at the regional banks. Now, there's going to be a lot of affected people by that, so do reach out in our free Discord if you are one of those individuals. We've got a very helpful and engaged community down there that can help out with any of your questions. So let's go ahead and take a look at the price action, right? Because obviously we've seen Bitcoin take a bit of a nosedive on the back of this news with the first US bank failure of 2024. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on with Bitcoin's price action. Okay, guys, so here we have Bitcoin. You can see that we have seen a bit of slippage. It's not massive. Okay, so over the last, what's this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, it's about 7.13% to the downside. In the last 24 hours, it hasn't actually been that bad. It's been about 1.49. So Bitcoin is actually holding up relatively well. Many of the altcoins, though, have obviously pulled back a little bit deeper. But as you can kind of see from our chart here, this is actually very much aligned to where our thoughts are. We've been looking for this next kind of move to the downside, and also, you know, still that potential ability to hit $68,000, $69,000 before we see the ultimate rejection. Now, we did get rejection here on the 50 simple moving average. That is our yellow line coming through the chart here. Okay, that's coming in at $67,306, and that is really where a lot of traders are looking at basically shorting the market. So there's a couple of things to kind of note here. You can see that we first got this rejection right up here on April the 15th. Okay, then see that we had more tests of about 3 candles right here on the 50 SMA. 22nd of April, the 23rd of April, and the 24th of April. All of those were showing us with weakness and selling pressure at the 50 simple moving average. We couldn't even hold the 50 exponential moving average, which is our blue line coming through here. So the chart does look a little bit bearish. However, and as I have said many times before, it actually isn't that bad, because we still remain bullish above the 200 exponential moving average on the daily time frame. And as the 200 EMA is our trend filter, while price is above it, actually we're in a longer upward trend. It isn't a downward trend on a macro scale, at least not yet. Now, if we were to see more banking crisis and more banks kind of going bust, then maybe we are going to see Bitcoin react more negatively and we'll see more slippage to the downside. But let's jump back to the charts here. What are we talking about? Well, if Bitcoin's price can rally, well, we're talking about $68,000, $69,000, maybe a fraction higher than that before we see the next drop. However, if we continue this downward price pressure and the market continues to be spooked, then we should expect further to the downside, with ultimately our target range being at a macro scale $52,000 to $55,000. Now again, if you've been watching the videos, you've been staying up to date with everything that we've been doing here on the channel, then this should be no surprise. We're right on track for that slippage, and we're right on track to see this move to the downside. But as I've said many times before, and I'll say it again in this video, this is an opportunity, because as we remain above that 200 exponential moving average, we are actually still bullish, even though you're seeing this really healthy correction to the downside. And again, many of the altcoins are also in very similar positions, right? We've seen the market move down, but they still remain actually reasonably well positioned. Although there are some altcoins that are lower than their 200 EMAs on the daily timeframes, and you should be concerned about those on the smaller timeframes as well. But for the most part, Bitcoin is reacting kind of as expected, and the banks, the regional banks over in the US, are obviously doing as expected. Now, we can't time the market. We don't know how long it's going to be before we actually see these things play out. Obviously, we were talking about this crisis back in January and February of 2024. That was 2 to 3 months ago, and yet here we are now with seeing the first failure of 2024. I think there's going to be many, many more to come as well, and it may spook the market. But for the most part, I do see this as a huge opportunity, because as Bitcoin corrects down, as the altcoins bleed out more, we are going to see some really good opportunities to dollar cost average and build out those positions. But I am very confident that this is just a short-term correction that may last, somewhere between 6 and 12 weeks. Once you're through that process, it's going to be a phenomenal parabolic run to the upside on Bitcoin, but also on the altcoins as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the chart and review where we are looking. So as you can kind of see, our target range down here is in line with our 200 exponential moving average. It is a 1-to-1 ratio, with the W wave being the same size as the Y wave. And this is very typical with an Elliott wave theory. And so if we do find support within this $52,000 to $55,000, the next move to the upside is to all-time highs, and it is going to be one hell of a run. For example, if we are to mirror this little structure right here, which I think is the most likely, and we come down to, let's say, 52,000, 53,000, then we are talking about our next major target being $101,000 to $118,000 for BTC. And of course, that's a long time target range. That is something at a macro scale that's going to take a very long time to play out. But the idea is that we launch from here to there in a very parabolic way. Lots of retail investors will be FOMOing in on the way up, and lots of early time investors will be looking to sell on this run to the upside. It's very possible that this is the end of the bullish market and the end of Bitcoin's run in 2024, 2025. Now, I cannot time the market. This could be over in just a matter of a couple of months. This could take 6 months to 12 months to play out. No one can really time the market that way, but it does look like it is the next big move for Bitcoin. We just have to appreciate that we have to go down first, and this move to the downside may take 6 to 12 weeks to play on out, so that we can actually then see great accumulation again once all those profits and once you've shaken out all the weak hands from the Bitcoin and the altcoin markets. Let me know what your thoughts are on all of that in the comments below. But guys, I think if you are in the crypto space right now, it is a huge opportunity to look at the portfolio, to look at everything that's happening in the market, take advantage of where altcoins are down 60, 70%, and load up those positions. They might drop down a little bit more. That is why dollar cost averaging is a fantastic strategy as you look to accumulate more altcoins. But guys, if you want to know a little bit more about what is going on in the crypto space, you should probably check out this video right here, where I'm discussing what's going on with VeChain.